Hello, More Than Lupus community, and welcome to this special video where we will be talking about what it's like for a lupus patient to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. My name is Kelly, and I am the founder of More Than Lupus, an inclusive, patient-driven, multi-ethnic, multi-generational lupus community that connects people not just here in the Pacific Northwest, but all around the world who are living with lupus or a lupus overlap disease, or who know and love someone who is, and they want to support them along their journey. If you are discovering More Than Lupus for the first time, we are so happy to have you, and we encourage you to check out our website and social media that is tailored for lupus patients because it's designed by lupus patients. So disclaimer, the words and opinions you are about to hear are for informational purposes only. The support and resources we provide at More Than Lupus should never replace the advice of your personal physician. So we know here that there is a lot of controversy surrounding the COVID-19 vaccine, and there are a lot of questions that people want answered before they feel safe to receive it. And if you live with lupus or another immunocompromising condition, there is added stress and added questions that arise regarding the safety and efficacy of it. Now, I'm not a doctor or a researcher. I do not work for the CDC or the NIH or a pharmaceutical company by any means. I am a lupus patient. I have been living with lupus since the age of 11. And as an immunocompromised individual, and as a nonprofit leader, and as a consumer, I have been very eager to learn more about the vaccine and its possible outcomes on patients just like me. So, as always, at More Than Lupus, when we see a need, we fill that need. And I felt there was a need for lupus patients and a lupus patient to be willing to share their experience of researching and applying for and receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. So I found someone who was willing to observe and was willing to share their experience with the More Than Lupus community. And that person was me. I just received my second dose of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. I want to share with you my experience in doing so, because nothing is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. When the COVID-19 vaccine by Pfizer and Moderna was approved, I was eager to learn if they had studied it on individuals like me in the clinical trials. Come to find out, it was not studied on people with lupus. At first, I was offended. How dare they exclude us from these studies? But that is simply not how vaccine clinical trials work. Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 vaccine drug trials are first initiated on healthy models. Always. More specific testing occurs after it's introduced to the general public. Hearing this, though, made me concerned. How would I respond to the vaccine? Would it be safe to get it because it had not been tested in clinical trials on lupus patients? Feeling a little nervous, I decided to reach out to my go-to source of lupus information, Dr. Don Thomas, who wrote the Lupus Encyclopedia. This is where it gets good. He set me straight by filling me in on some truths. Number 1, the clinical trial practices were standard. Even though it seemed rushed to us, there were no cutting corners or unethical activity to get it approved. 2, this is the most studied vaccine ever in history. And 3, which is the best one, historically, lupus patients respond very well to vaccines. I had heard that we didn't respond well, so I asked about that, and he cleared the air. Sometimes lupus patients don't respond well to live vaccines, but thankfully, the COVID-19 vaccine is not a live vaccine. Therefore, most should tolerate it well. Okay, so that made me feel a little bit better, but I still had questions, specifically about medications. And the medications that I'm on, and how those medications might affect the vaccine efficacy. Once again, Dr. Thomas provided me with more information. Now, historically, there have been a few lupus medications that have lessened the effectiveness of vaccines in past studies. Because of this, there are recommendations to adjust medications, doses that are temporarily adjusted if you are going to receive the COVID-19 Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. I have a list, which I will post in the comments below, listing every medication and what is suggested. But I'll have you know that the only ones that you really need to worry about or adjust are the following: methotrexate, Xeljanz, Olumiant, I don't know how to say that right, Rinvoq, Arenica, Cytoxan, and Rituxan. So instead of me going through the whole list, I'm going to share it below so that you can have it and reference it later. Now, for me personally, the only one I had to adjust was the methotrexate injections that I give myself once a week. As you can see, from what I mentioned, hydroxychloroquine and prednisone, contrary to some news out there, they do not have to be adjusted. They will not interfere with the COVID vaccine. And most doctors would be quick to remind you to never stop taking or alter your prednisone dose without talking to your doctors first. So after hearing that, I felt even more at peace about my decision to receive the vaccine. Now, ironically, in the state of Oregon, I was not approved to receive the COVID-19 vaccine as an immunocompromised individual with pre-existing conditions, but rather I was approved as someone who was exposed to others who are immunocompromised. With my nonprofit and the work that I do and the people I interact with, I qualified under phase 1, groups 2, and groups 3 as medical transport and medical resources that have contact with immunocompromised individuals, since my work involves visiting patients at assisted living facilities, taking them to their appointments, visiting their homes, and bringing resources to them while they are hospitalized. Okay, so now let's get to the good stuff. Let me tell you about my experience with my first dose. 3 weeks ago, I walked into the Oregon Convention Center with 1,500 of my closest friends. The vaccine forms, they do ask on the forms if you have any pre-existing, let me go back on that. The vaccine forms do not ask if you have any pre-existing conditions, which oddly made me feel at peace, because obviously they don't ask if they don't need to know, and that made me feel less concerned that they were not concerned that I had lupus. Following me? The form did ask, though, if I had any reaction to vaccines and if you had any reactions to food or medications, which I had to answer yes, because I have an iodine and shellfish allergy, which requires me to carry an EpiPen. I was sent to another line after filling out that form to discuss my allergy, and then was cleared by 2 nurses before getting back in line to receive my first dose. I then had the pleasure of having a doctor give me my first COVID-19 Pfizer dose, and he reminded me that I would need to stay for 30 minutes instead of the traditional 15 minutes due to my allergy. And though, no, there is no shellfish or iodine in the vaccine, they just wanted to be extra careful that I didn't have a histamine reaction of any kind. Now the shot didn't hurt, and I waited for my 30 minutes. And then I walked out of there feeling relieved that I had made a step, a big step, to hopefully never having to experience the dreaded symptoms of COVID. Now, I handled the first dose pretty well. I had mild aches and pains, mild headache, and mild arm tenderness at the injection site, which lasted roughly 24 hours. The other thing I noticed is that I have a subclavicle lymph node right here under my collarbone that's swelled to the size of a gumball. Just to be on the safe side, I called my doctor and told her about the swelling of my lymph nodes. And she said that could be expected for someone like me who has an overactive immune system. She said not to be concerned and that I could take Tylenol or any sort of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory to alleviate any soreness that it caused. Within a week, the swelling ceased, and it still seems somewhat more pronounced than before, but it's not painful, not red, no big deal. Now that brings us to the present. 3 weeks have passed, and it was time for my second COVID-19 Pfizer vaccine dose. I was happy when I arrived to see that there were significantly less people there than the first time. Try to go during the week, not on a weekend. I learned that lesson the hard way. And I was able to fill out my paperwork and work my way through my nurse consults like last time fairly quickly. Same questions as before, but I could tell the staff was more relaxed knowing I had no reaction to my first dose. I still brought my EpiPen. I still clarified with all the nurses and doctors I interacted with, and I still had to wait a little bit of extra time afterwards as well, just to be on the safe side. Now, people had warned me that the second dose is harder on the body, that side effects could be more prevalent, and I would agree. Even now, as I'm recording this video for you, I'm having a difficult time concentrating, and I'm starting to trip on my words a little bit. I just don't feel well. My arm is pretty sore. It's hard to lift. I feel pretty achy. I feel pretty fuzzy mentally. And my subclavicle lymph node is starting to swell up again, just like before. But I don't have a fever right now. I have no redness at the site, or what they're calling COVID arm. And even though I feel somewhat icky, I am so relieved. I also wanted to share that my personal rheumatologist was thrilled that I was getting vaccinated. And subsequently, every rheumatologist who I've spoken to, and thankfully, I have the luxury of having access to rheumatologists, the top rheumatologists all around the country, all have recommended their lupus patients to receive the vaccine. Now, I'm sharing all of this with you, not to guilt you into getting the vaccine, but rather to give you peace of mind if you are wanting to receive it, but are nervous or are scared as to what to expect. My hope by sharing my experience is that it helps you make the best choices for your health. And I implore you to make informed decisions based on factual data supported by legitimate, non-biased sources. And at More Than Lupus, we are committed to partnering with esteemed medical professionals and highly regarded research organizations to bring you the latest, most reliable, and trustworthy COVID-19 vaccine-related information. You know, as members of a very large health community, it's important to remember that at the end of the day, we have a choice to either be a part of the public health care problem or a part of the solution. And I hope that after listening to this video and after careful examination of your medical history, you will join us in choosing the latter. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on More Than Lupus. Bye-bye.